beautiful. Not only from a physical standpoint, but from a spiritual standpoint. Beautiful. Sharing, caring, loving, and angry at the same time about the plight of her people.
Friendly, warm-hearted, but persistent sister. If she wanted you to do something, she would never stop asking until you said you would do it.
Timeless, brilliant, thoughtful.
For a petite woman, she had a strong personality.
Vel is a legend, she's a titan, she's an icon. Every big word you can think of is Vel Phillips.
She was consistently on point about the importance of not only dreaming big, but really doing the work to make it happen. She was a realist.
She was small in stature and, just this lovely looking lady, but she was absolutely tenacious in her desire to get what she thought was right and in the best interest of the African American community.
She never would give up. When she was on a mindset to do something, she would figure out alternatives, and eventually it would be done.
She was the originator and the completer. That's it. She started things that were targeted towards social justice and peace.
First of all, let me describe Val. I would describe Val as a show poodle with the heart of a Rottweiler, okay? So when you met Val, you would meet this petite, very attractive, genteel lady, right? Val had the heart of a tiger. She meant what she said and said what she meant. She was just very polite about it. Val talked a lot about her mother and the influence her mother had on raising her. And that was that she always portrayed herself as a lady first. And so there were times when Val would become very upset, like at one point she called the Common Council a bunch of bigoted rednecks, okay? And afterwards, when we talked, she was very apologetic. Oh, Prentice, I shouldn't have sworn. My mother would have said, Val, you didn't swear, but it was just the harshness of her tone. She considered that inappropriate. I mean, you should always be nice and courteous to people.
I met Vel Phillips in 1954 when my husband and I moved to Milwaukee. We were in 3 organizations together, the Milwaukee chapter of Links, Jack and Jill, and the Girlfriends, which is the latest organization. Val was I call her my silly friend because in later years I used to transport her to these meetings and things, and we giggle all the way to the meeting, talk about the things that we used to do when we first came here, and there were so few of us here that we kind of clung to each other,
I have known Mrs. Phillips for probably as long as I can remember because we are members of the same sorority. However, my mother, who is also a Delta, introduced me to her when our family came in 1962. She has always been proud of being a Delta, having been made at Alpha Chapter, and just always having that pride and fellowshipping with other members of the sorority.
I knew her for so many years, since I was a child. And at that time, there was a lot of activity with the NAACP, the housing, the riots we had in Milwaukee. She was a president of the chapter. I remember one particular NAACP picnic at Estabrook Park. She was going around smiling, talking to everyone, getting their opinions on various issues, on housing and whatnot. And while she was doing it, she would come to us young folk and ask us our opinions. Now, mind you, at that point, I was either in, as they called it then, junior high school or in high school. And even though I'd been to all the meetings, no one had ever asked us what our opinion was. And when she did it, I thought, you know, we need to be involved in this too, and that's what her point was.
She was probably the most influential person that one could ever meet here. If you like football, you know she was offense and defense. She did everything in this community, and she was a soldier for the people.
She was not someone who tooted her own horn. She did what she did without making a lot of noise and without patting herself on the back.
I knew Vel Phillips first as just a historical figure. But then I met her when I was running for office, because everybody said go talk to Vel. And so I spoke with her prior to my election. We hit it off. She endorsed me and became a mentor from that point.
When she started talking about discrimination in housing, I was a freshman at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, and she taught one of the courses that I was taking. And just the passion in her eyes and her charge and expectation to us that she might be in the spotlight, but it was our job to be the Army. It was our job to be the Army. And as you think today of Wakanda land, I call it Vel Phillips land. She was the leader of the Army for us. She took the heat. She fought the battle. She was the lone African American sitting in a common council, many of whom did not want her there. She was the one that had to forgo her privacy to insist that there be a restroom for females. She was the one that always had to step out in front, but to make sure that those that were around her and those like me who would be coming after her had an easier pathway. Not that, she always used to say this, she'd say, Joni, the fight will always continue. Our job really is to make sure that while we occupy the space, that we do our part to make it better for those who are tapping us on the shoulder.
She was available. She was a fine example, right? She was very elegant, regal even, in the way that she carried herself. But she was always willing to share her experiences. You know, for somebody to be as revered as she was and as accomplished as she was, she never lost her common touch. And she always felt connected to the community.
One of the things I found out about her that I think a lot of people didn't know. We, people in our community, take pride in Val. She was the first this, she was the first that, she was the first other thing. Val never relished that. Val was kind of, during our conversations, angry about that, because Val felt like that should have already happened. I should not have been the first, okay? If African Americans were treated fairly, I would not be the first. That would have already taken place. You'd already had an African American on the Common Council. Why didn't we have one there? Why did she have to be the first? You understand what I'm saying? So where we take a lot of pride, oh, Val was the first this and the first that, she was saying, that should have happened for my people a long time ago, okay? And so because those things hadn't happened, Val had a real commitment. We could say to civil rights, she'd probably say to human rights.